From the very beginning, there was something about her. My mother-in-law. I tried not to make assumptions at first, but I felt the coldness the moment I met her. It wasn't just that she was cautious, or maybe protective over her son, no, it was deeper than that. She looked at me like I didn't belong, like I was an outsider, and it was clear that I was never going to measure up in her eyes. At first, it was small things, passing comments about me in front of my boyfriend back then, things I should have brushed off. But they kept coming, layer after layer. I remember her saying that the whole town knew me, that I'd been with countless men and was now using her son. She told him that I wasn't who I said I was. She painted me as a manipulative woman, as someone who only had eyes on him for selfish reasons. She made sure that my name, my reputation, was stained before it even had a chance to breathe. I tried to ignore it at first. What else could I do? I thought, maybe I could win her over, show her who I really was. But it wasn't long before I realized that I would always be the villain in her story. But as time passed and things got more serious between me and her son, it only grew worse. It felt like I couldn't breathe without her casting doubt on me. No matter how much I tried to prove myself, she only built walls around me, pushing me farther away with every word. It was hard, but I still held on. I loved her son. I wanted to build a life with him. I didn't want to give up, but something inside me began to break. I could feel it, the hurt, the isolation, the judgment. It was like I was fighting a battle I could never win, and I didn't even know how to fight back. By then, we had already moved in together. And that's when it all started to change. When we finally decided to move in together, I thought things would get better. I thought that living under one roof would bring us closer, and maybe, just maybe, things would settle down with his mother. But I couldn't have been more wrong. It didn't take long before she started to show up at our doorstep, uninvited, as though she had every right to be there. At first, I tried to be polite, to let it slide, but it became a pattern. Every other day, sometimes more, she would just show up without any warning, barging in as if the house were hers. She would never ask, never even call first. And when she walked in, it wasn't like a visit, it was as though she was taking control. She'd march through the front door, no hesitation, and I'd immediately feel that wave of anxiety hit me. The worst part. The first words out of her mouth were always criticisms. "The house looks so messy," she would say. "I've never seen it this dirty before." I remember how her eyes would scan every corner of the house, every little imperfection, like she was judging me for not keeping everything perfect. I wanted to tell her that I was doing my best, that I was trying, but it was hard to even speak with her hovering over me like that. And then came the food. She would never fail to comment on that either. If I made a meal, it was either too bland, too salty, or just not good enough. She had her own ideas of what was proper, and nothing I did could ever meet her standards. She'd say, "Is this really the best you can do?" every time I cooked. I'd stand there, in the kitchen, trying to hold back the tears, knowing that I could never get it right in her eyes. It wasn't just about food or cleanliness, it was about me, my worth, my abilities, and it felt like I could never do anything right. What hurt the most was that my husband never stood up for me. He would just nod, apologizing to her, telling me to be patient, that she didn't mean anything by it. But inside, I felt crushed. I needed him to see, to understand how painful this was. But instead, he let it happen, time and time again, and I was left to face her criticisms alone. I tried to be the good partner, the good wife. I wanted to get along with her, for his sake. But her presence in our home, her constant undermining of me, began to wear me down. It felt like no matter how much I tried, I was always falling short of her expectations, and worse, my husband's indifference made it feel like I was fighting this battle alone. But the worst was yet to come. And I had no idea how much worse it would get. Things took a darker turn after our son was born. I had hoped that becoming a mother would bring us closer together, that maybe her attention would shift to our child, her first grandchild. I thought she might soften, might start to see me as a mother too, as someone who could give her son the family he deserved. But instead, it only seemed to fuel her bitterness toward me. From the moment we brought our baby home, it felt like the accusations started to pour in, one after another, and they were always the same: that child isn't his. He's not really your son. You must have been out with someone else. Every time she said it, I felt like the breath was knocked out of me. She'd say it so casually, as if it was just another thought that passed through her mind, but every word was a dagger in my heart. I loved my husband with everything I had. I adored him. And I would never betray him, especially not like that. But to hear her say those things about my son, to question whether I was even his mother, it was unbearable. She didn't know the pain it caused me, the turmoil I felt inside every time she brought it up. It made me feel like I was less than a mother, like I didn't deserve my child, like I wasn't worthy of the family I was trying so hard to build. But what made it worse was my husband's silence. Every time she made those accusations, I looked to him, hoping, praying that he would stand up for me, that he would tell his mother that enough was enough, that it was wrong. But he never did. He would just remain quiet, his eyes shifting away, as though he couldn't bear to confront the conflict. He didn't want to upset his mother. He didn't want to make waves. But in doing so, he let her hurt me, again and again. I was already struggling, recovering from a difficult birth, my body aching in ways I couldn't describe. And to top it all off, I was battling the crushing weight of postpartum depression. I felt like I was sinking into the overwhelming exhaustion, the constant care of our newborn, the relentless stress of trying to please everyone and never getting it right. The joy I had anticipated was replaced by a constant feeling of inadequacy. There I was, alone in my pain, with no one to help. My husband, distant still, and my mother-in-law, relentless in her judgment. I was suffocating under the weight of it all, but no one seemed to notice. My baby was crying all night, and I couldn't even close my eyes for a second. Every night felt like I was walking through a fog, struggling to hold it together, to keep from breaking. At my lowest, I felt like I was invisible. My emotions, my struggles, they were unseen. And the one person I thought would support me, my husband, was too wrapped up in his own fears to stand up for me. I felt like I was drowning in this life that I had tried so hard to build, and I didn't know how much longer I could keep going like this. The pain was becoming unbearable, and I was starting to lose hope. I didn't know what to do anymore. I don't know when I started feeling completely alone in all of this. It wasn't just the sleepless nights or the constant criticism, it was the silence from my husband. Each day, I waited, hoping he would step in, hoping he would see the toll this was taking on me, on our relationship, on our family. But the silence stretched on, and I felt myself becoming smaller, more insignificant in our own home. I couldn't understand it. How could he let his mother treat me this way? How could he ignore what was happening right under his nose? It wasn't just her anymore, it was the whole situation. His refusal to stand up for me, to defend me, made me feel invisible. I was supposed to be his partner, his equal, and yet, I felt like I was constantly fighting this battle by myself, against forces I couldn't control. Every time she came over and criticized me, every time she questioned my ability to be a good mother or wife, I would turn to him for support, but all I got was silence. Maybe he didn't want to rock the boat. Maybe he didn't know how to stand up to his mother. But it was killing me. I needed him to be there for me, to be the one person I could count on, but instead, it felt like he was choosing her every time. It wasn't just the emotional toll of her constant attacks. It was the exhaustion, the mental and physical weight of it all. I was barely holding myself together. My son needed me, but I needed help too. I needed him to be there for me, to help carry the weight of the responsibilities we'd both taken on as parents. But instead, it felt like I was alone in this. Alone with a baby, alone with the weight of postpartum depression, and alone with a husband who seemed distant and withdrawn. The more I struggled, the more I sank. It wasn't just the exhaustion from caring for my newborn, it was the emotional exhaustion of trying to keep it all together when everything around me felt like it was falling apart. I felt like I was failing at everything, as a wife, as a mother, as a person. But no one seemed to notice. No one seemed to care. And then there was my mother-in-law, always hovering, always critical. I could never escape her judgment. She was always there, in the background, making her comments, undermining me, questioning my worth. Her constant presence in our lives felt like a weight I could never shake off. It was suffocating. I couldn't breathe. And still, my husband said nothing. He stayed silent, too afraid to confront his mother, too unwilling to acknowledge what was happening. His silence was its own kind of rejection, and it hurt just as much as her cruel words. I tried to talk to him about it, but every time I did, he'd brush it off. "She doesn't mean it," he'd say. "You're overreacting." I wanted to scream at him. Did he not see what was happening? Did he not see how his mother was tearing us apart? But I stayed quiet. I didn't know what else to do. I was exhausted, mentally and physically, and I didn't have the energy to fight anymore. I just wanted it all to stop. I wanted him to see me, to see how much I was struggling. But I didn't know how to make him understand. And now, more than ever, I didn't know what to do next. How do you fix something when you feel like you're the only one trying? How do you hold your family together when the person you need most refuses to see your pain? I had thought, for a long time, that things would get better. I kept convincing myself that eventually, things would change. That my husband would wake up and realize what was happening. That my mother-in-law would ease up, maybe even grow fond of me after seeing how much I loved her son, how much I cared for her grandson. But as time went on, I began to realize that nothing was going to change. Not unless I did something about it. The breaking point came one evening after an especially brutal day. I had barely slept the night before, with the baby crying and no help from anyone. My body ached in every way, and my mind felt like it was spiraling into a dark, endless hole. I had been doing everything, feeding, changing, comforting, and yet I felt like I was failing, like I was losing myself piece by piece. Every time I tried to rest, every time I tried to ask for a little help, it was met with silence. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, and physically spent. That evening, as I was nursing our son, I heard the doorbell ring. My heart sank. It was her. Of course, it was. My mother-in-law had appeared, unannounced, at the worst possible time, as she always did. I stood there, rocking the baby in my arms, dreading what was to come. My husband was in the other room, but I knew he wouldn't step in. Not now. He never did. I opened the door with a forced smile, already bracing myself for her sharp words. She didn't even greet me, she just walked in, as if she owned the place, as if she had every right to be there. And just like that, the criticisms started. The house was too messy. The baby was too fussy. And then came the worst part. "I don't know why you're so stressed," she said, her voice dripping with judgment. "Maybe if you were a better mother, he wouldn't cry so much. Maybe if you cared more about your home, things wouldn't be so chaotic." I felt the tears burn behind my eyes, but I couldn't cry. I didn't have the strength for it. I couldn't let her see how much she was breaking me. But inside, I was falling apart. Every word she said felt like a personal attack, a reminder of how unworthy I was, how much I was failing. She wasn't just criticizing my home, she was criticizing me as a person, as a mother, as a wife. And there he was, my husband, standing in the corner, watching it all unfold. He didn't say anything. Not one word. His eyes were fixed on the floor, like he was too scared to even look at me, let alone say something to stop it. And in that moment, something inside of me snapped. I had spent so much time trying to be patient, trying to be understanding. I had tried to keep the peace, to be the good wife, the good mother. But I couldn't keep going like this. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay when it wasn't. I couldn't keep sacrificing my happiness, my mental health, just to avoid conflict. I turned to my husband, my voice trembling with frustration and hurt. "Why are you letting her do this to me?" I asked, the words coming out in a rush. "Why are you letting her treat me like this? I need you, and you're just standing there, doing nothing. Do you not see how much this is hurting me? How much I'm struggling?" His eyes widened, but he didn't say anything. He looked at me for a moment, then at his mother, who was standing there, watching us with that same critical gaze. And for a brief second, I thought he might finally say something, do something, but then he just shook his head and mumbled, "I'm sorry, I don't know what to do." And that was it. The words hung in the air like a heavy weight, and I realized that nothing was ever going to change. He was never going to stand up for me. His silence was all I needed to know. I wasn't just dealing with a mother-in-law who didn't like me, I was dealing with a husband who didn't see me, who didn't see how much pain I was in. I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't keep fighting for a marriage that felt like it was falling apart, for a relationship where I was constantly being ignored, for a family that was making me feel invisible. I didn't know what to do next. I didn't know where to go from here. But I knew one thing, I couldn't keep living like this. I was running out of strength, and I needed to find a way out. The question was, where could I go from here? What was my next step? The days that followed felt like a blur. My emotions, once so tightly controlled, now spilled over in waves. I felt lost, utterly lost. It was as if everything I had built, every dream I had for us, was crumbling at my feet, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I tried to hold it together for our son. I tried to focus on him, on his little face, his small hands wrapped around mine. But even that felt like a struggle. I wanted to be the mother I knew I could be, the mother he deserved, but how could I do that when I was drowning in pain and loneliness? How could I give him the love and care he needed when I didn't even know how to take care of myself anymore? And then there was my husband, still silent, still distant. Every time I looked at him, I felt a pang of hurt. I had begged him, pleaded with him to see me, to hear me, but all I got in return was that same empty silence. His love for me seemed like an afterthought, something he didn't have the energy to defend, something he wasn't willing to fight for. I thought about leaving. I thought about packing my things, taking our son, and walking away. But where would I go? What would I do? The thought of being alone, of starting over from scratch, terrified me. But the thought of staying in a place where I felt invisible, where my worth was constantly questioned, where I was left to fight my battles alone, felt even worse. What was my future? What did it look like in this life, in this marriage, where I had to beg for respect and support? Was I going to keep waiting for things to magically get better? For my husband to wake up and realize what was happening? For my mother-in-law to suddenly respect me as a mother, as a wife? Or was I going to keep sacrificing myself, my mental health, my happiness, for a family that didn't see me? I didn't know the answer. I didn't know how to fix this, how to make it better. I didn't know how to make him understand how much I was hurting, how much I was giving, how much I was losing. But I did know one thing, I couldn't keep going like this. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay when it wasn't. I couldn't keep ignoring my own pain, my own needs, just to keep the peace. I had to make a choice. I had to figure out what was best for me and for my son, even if that meant walking away from everything I thought I knew. But the thought of making that decision, of leaving behind the life I had hoped for, the family I had always dreamed of, felt like the hardest thing in the world. And so, there I was. Standing on the edge of a decision I wasn't sure I could make. I didn't know what the future held, and that terrified me. But I knew I couldn't keep living in this uncertainty, in this pain. I couldn't keep letting my worth be determined by the opinions of others, by a family that didn't respect me. So what did I do next? I didn't know. But I knew I had to take that first step towards something, anything, different. Even if it meant stepping into the unknown. Even if it meant taking a leap of faith, not knowing where I would land. All I knew was that I deserved better. I deserved peace. I deserved love. And somehow, I was going to find a way to get it.
Oh, my heart aches reading this. I can feel the weight of every word, the suffocating pressure of the isolation, the slow unraveling of a dream that was supposed to be filled with love and support. It's gut-wrenching, really. The wife's pain, her loneliness, her exhaustion, it's like a tangible thing, and you can't help but feel every ounce of it. I can't imagine what it must be like to feel like you're fighting alone in your own home, to be constantly undermined, constantly questioned, with no one standing by your side. I keep thinking about how much she's giving, how much she's sacrificing, and still, her husband remains silent, her mother-in-law keeps tearing her down. I can't fathom that level of emotional exhaustion, of trying and never getting the support you need. It's like she's invisible, like she's screaming and no one hears. It's so unfair. How is it possible for a person to give so much and have so little in return? And when she reaches that breaking point, when the pain is just too much to carry, it hits me. You feel the desperation in her words, that need for something, anything, to change. But she's so unsure of what to do next. The future is a blur, and she's standing on the edge, terrified of the unknown, but knowing that staying where she is would mean losing herself completely. It's heartbreaking, honestly. I feel for her, deeply. And the silence from her husband? The fact that he doesn't defend her, doesn't even try to shield her from his mother's cruelty, that hits hard. It makes you wonder how much longer she can keep fighting when the person she loves and relies on isn't stepping up. I just want to hug her, to tell her that she deserves so much more, that she deserves to be seen and loved and supported. She deserves peace, she deserves understanding, she deserves to feel like she matters. But I also know how hard it is to leave behind something you've invested so much of yourself into. It's like she's caught between two impossible choices, and the courage it takes to make a change? It's monumental. This story is just a painful reminder of how important it is to be heard, to be valued in our relationships. No one should feel invisible or like they're the only one trying to make things work. The wife, in this story, is a woman who deserves so much more than what she's getting. And I just hope she finds the strength to do what's best for her, even if it means stepping into the unknown. Because, honestly, she's already been through so much. She deserves to find happiness, in whatever way that looks like for her.